Our reading this morning comes to us from Luke's Gospel, the 19th chapter. Listen now, friends, for the word of the Lord. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through it. A man was there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd he could not, because he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him, because he was going to pass that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." So he hurried down and was happy to welcome him. All who saw it began to grumble and said, "He has gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner." Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Look, half of my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much." Then Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and to save the lost." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So Wednesday was Back to the Future Day. If you don't know what I'm referring to, the Back to the Future series of movies that started in 1985, and yes, I am a child of the 80s. That was the day in which Marty McFly went into the future, was this past Wednesday, 30 years after the first movie. And I was so sad to see that the Cubs did not, in fact, make the World Series or win the World Series as the Back to the Future franchise promised. I felt very let down by that. But I am a product of my generation, and I've been thinking about this week. I am typical in many ways of the Generation X. I am a Gen Xer. And Gen Xers are cynical by nature and skeptical. And I find that it's an interesting thing that God also has me a preacher, because that kind of cynicism and yet hopefulness that we normally look for in a pastor, and that is part of my call, is an interesting blend. Looking at the GenX67.com website, I was thinking about Generation Xers this week, and I did a little research. And one of the reasons that Gen Xers are thought to be so cynical and skeptical by nature is the historical events that took place in the 70s and 80s when they were coming of age. The energy crisis of the 70s, Watergate, the Iran-Contra affair, nuclear disasters like 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl, the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster, the widespread layoffs of the 80s, the dot-com boom and bust of the late 90s, corporate greed, the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal. We could go on and on. But for some reason, though negative things happen in every age, for some reason these events, people feel, impacted Generation Xers growing up at that time more than often happens, left many of us lacking trust in society around us, lacking faith in authority, and looking for answers elsewhere. There were a number of religious scandals in the 1980s, too, that aren't mentioned there in that list. That we had the rise of televangelism, and we had famous scandals like the Swaggarts and the Bakers, as well as other church scandals during that time that left many in my generation with the impression that the church really couldn't be trusted. It's a sad thing, isn't it? To look at generations of younger folks who wonder if they can trust the church. And I get it. I do. Because I'm, again, a product of that same generation. You see, despite our church's efforts, and by church, I mean capital C church, the church universal, to reach younger generations of folks, in a society at large, we still see a decline statistically in membership in churches and in giving to churches. And I believe that that's related to that feeling of lack of trust. People are asking, does the church deserve my money? Does the church deserve my time? What will the church do if I give? Can I trust the church with what I do give? Couldn't I give to other causes that would make a bigger impact? Maybe the core question, and even the most cynical of questions in this list, would be, does God really need my money? And I must say, first of all, that I want to affirm this congregation's spirit of giving generously. Look around. We worship in a beautiful sanctuary, in a wonderful facility. A few months ago, your stewardship, finance, and budget team let you know that we needed help continuing to make the payments on the building throughout the year. And you responded generously. A year ago or so, when we were going through the crisis that this church was going through and figuring out how we were going to construct a budget for the coming year, again, you gave faithfully and generously. And so, I say this not to congratulate you, but to celebrate that the spiritual maturity that a great many folks in this congregation have. Because giving is a sign of spiritual health. I'm going to say more about that in a few minutes. Because I want to go back to that question. Does God really need my money? Now, I recognize I'm kind of walking on thin ice in asking this question before you today. In our stewardship, budget, and finance meeting last week, I told them that I was going to be discussing this question. And there was kind of a general chuckle in the room. And then I said, well, that's going to be the subtext of the sermon, but I'm not going to use it as my sermon title. And we all laughed again. But this week I was thinking and praying on it, and I thought, why not? Why not use it as the title of my sermon? Because that may be the question that some of us here are asking today. Does God really need my money? And I believe, thinking about, particularly about folks in my generation and younger, and the skepticism and the cynicism there is in society at large today, may just be the time for us to address that question here in church. So here goes, my attempt to answer the question, does God really need my money? My answer to this question is in 3 parts, okay? 3 parts. So the first part is this: no, God does not really need my money. Why? Because all money truly actually is God's. The silver is mine and the gold is mine, says the Lord. The earth is the Lord's and all that is in it. Scripture bears witness to the fact that all of creation belongs to God. Even the things that we make, even the constructs that we put together in this life, all of it belongs to God. And so when we give, and when we give particularly to the church, we give recognizing what has been given to us. Giving then becomes an act of worship. We worship God by recognizing that what we've been given is God's, and we return that portion so that God can bless others and bless the world with the kingdom. That's the first answer. But there are others. Does God really need my money? Part 2. Again, no. But as we said last week, God, you see, chooses to bring about the kingdom of heaven on earth through us, right? We talked about that a lot last week. God's brought the kingdom of heaven through Jesus Christ to earth, but it wasn't completed in its fullness. And so when Jesus ascended into heaven, he left the keys with the disciples. And it's our task, the church, to continue working towards that kingdom of heaven here on earth. The church can't do that without earthly resources. You see, so we participate in bringing about the kingdom of God on earth through using earthly resources. There was a little girl who lived in Philadelphia many years ago. And she wanted to be part of a Sunday school that met near her. But she was told there was no room. And so she began saving up her money. Her dream, her wish, was to save enough money that they could add on to the room where Sunday school was taking place, so there would be room for her. A few years after that, she became sick and died. Beneath her pillow, they found a small book with 57 pennies. And on a piece of paper, it said, to help build the little temple bigger so more children can go to Sunday school. The note, the book, the pennies were taken to the Reverend Russell Conway, who told the story of the congregation, and the word spread throughout the country. And people were sending in gifts and donations, inspired by this little girl's mission and her generosity. The little temple church was soon replaced with a church that seated 3,300 people, and with lots of room for Sunday school. There's also a temple university and a temple hospital. God uses earthly things to bring about the kingdom when we participate, when we give of ourselves, when we give joyfully and sacrificially. Even a small gift of 57 pennies or a widow's mite can make a big difference. And third, does God really need our money? Well, no, again. But we need to give. It's interesting, the best cure for mass skepticism and cynicism, I believe, is mass generosity. I think that nothing makes us more hopeful, more joyful than giving of ourselves. Nothing gives us a greater feeling of the goodness possible in human beings when we ourselves act out that goodness. It's great to receive help and support. As one has pointed out, though, it's even greater to give it. In fact, that's how Jesus knows that Zacchaeus has been saved. Not just that Zacchaeus is interested in Jesus, not just that Zacchaeus is willing to host Jesus in his home, but that Zacchaeus is willing to give. And he doesn't hold back in his giving. Among the first Germans to be converted to Christianity were the Franks. And they were converted to Jesus in mass. That is, there would be groups of thousands of them who would wade out into the river, and they would drop down and be immersed in that large group. And they knew to some degree what this was. And so they knew that in dropping into the water and being immersed, this would make them followers of a new king. The story, we are told, is that when the Frankish warriors came to be baptized in the water of the Rhine, or the Rhine of the Rhone, they were always careful to hold their swords above their heads and thus out of the water when they were dunked. One might say, well, they didn't want them to rust. If that were the case, they could have left them on the side of the bank, on the side of the river. We're told that they held the swords above their heads so they wouldn't go into the water because they knew the water would change them too. They were holding back a part of themselves. And as one Christian writer said, it wouldn't do back then and it won't do now. This Jesus asks for everything. And friends, I would argue that we can't give Jesus our souls and expect Christ to be okay with holding the other things of our lives, our time, our talents, indeed our treasure. We're not truly giving ourselves to Jesus if we're clutching on to those things of the world. In Genesis 14, we see the first tithe in the Bible. It was Abram. He wasn't even called Abraham yet. This predates the Ten Commandments by hundreds of years. And then Jacob, his grandson, tithed as well, gave a tenth of all he had to worship God. The law of tithing is given to Moses on Mount Sinai, the same place Moses received the Ten Commandments. And I recognize that we are all in different financial situations. Some of us cannot conceivably tithe. Maybe we are in debt. Maybe we are paying off student loans, consumer loans, whatever it is. It's not so much about the amount, I believe, but more that God recognizes that giving is important to us. It changes who we are. It makes us less cynical, less skeptical, more hopeful, more joyful, more open to what God will do in us and through us next, more ready to receive the kingdom. It's important, God knew, for us to learn to give and to ritualize our giving, because the love of giving that is so innate in us, I believe, when we're children, right, very quickly becomes entangled in a love of having. Our son, when we first started talking about moving here to Arkansas, found out about Crater of Diamonds State Park. And suddenly he was all for it. And he was excited. Our son's 6, if you don't know him. He was so excited. One day while we were packing things up, he saw some wooden boxes that I have, and they're about yay big and from different things. And he asked if he could have one, and I said, we asked him, why? Why do you want one of these little wooden chests? And he said, well, I need a treasure box for my diamond. See, it happens young. It happens to us early. Even as children, we know that love of finding treasure and keeping it. What's in your treasure box, friends? Jesus asked us to consider an investment in the kingdom of heaven. He said any investment into the kingdom would be multiplied and would be yours in heaven. Is that a treasure worthy of your treasure box? Is that a bounty worthy of your treasure box? Today and in the coming days, we invite you to participate in a conversation. I'd like for you to reflect on this question. What is in my treasure box? We're going to be talking about that online. You see, on our church's website and connected, we'll have links to our Facebook page, and we'll be sending it out. We're going to have some discussion follow-up questions. We're going to have the opportunity to interact, to meditate, and to interact and enter your own answers. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, we'll try to get you up to speed there. But it's not just because we're talking about money today. We're going to be doing this moving forward in coming weeks. We want to give you the opportunity to chew on what we're talking about in worship and talk about it together and figure out how we can live it out in our lives in this community and beyond. Today will be an opportunity for you to do that, so I hope you'll look for that online. But you see, I believe that sooner or later we're going to have to answer that question. What is in our treasure box? What is it our heart holds most valuable in our lives? Are they the things of the kingdom, Christ's reign, or are they the things of our own kingdoms, of our own making? Is it in amassing the things we believe give us security or pleasure or status? Friends, God doesn't need our money, but we need to give it. We need to give, to learn, to make room in our treasure box for those things of the kingdom of heaven that indeed Christ came to bring. I pray we will indeed think about that in the coming days. And as stewardship season progresses, I hope we will all prayerfully consider what is our greatest treasure here on earth.